I think that when you are in a position of power, you kind of take responsibility to care for the people that you're like sovereign over. When you are in a position of power, you are abusing it if you are doing bad things to those people.
A very high percentage of them are actually put into gas chambers.
Arguably, that is the most humane way to kill animals. That's how animals are killed in laboratory settings. But what about the accessibility issue? And so I definitely do think that it's something that I do struggle with morally, but at the end of the day, I really like bacon.
So it's okay to torture, enslave, or kill someone if they have a low IQ or some sort of cognitive impairment. Is that okay?
Absolutely not.
Okay, it's hard no on that.
Hard no.
Hard no, okay. Let's talk about real quick what those words mean, and then we can move past it. But like torture, what is like just basic definition?
Mistreating someone in a form that's either physically, emotionally, or mentally harsh.
Yeah, I like that because I often think of physical, but yeah, you add the emotional. That's true, yeah. Yeah, I like that. And then what about like enslavement? Like what sorts of things do you think about?
Keeping someone against their will, forcing them to do things that they normally otherwise wouldn't do. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah, good definitions. And then killing, what is killing? No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so wrong on all those things. And like how bad are those things? Are they a little bad, medium bad, like very bad?
They're pretty bad.
Pretty
yeah,
bad.
they're really bad. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Hot takes today then. Okay, so same question for all those things. Would it be okay to do those things if, say, like you were in a position of power over someone else? Would that make them okay?
I think that makes it even worse.
Yeah. Why do you think it makes it worse?
I think that when you are in a position of power, you kind of take responsibility to care for the people that you're like sovereign over. I feel like you have to protect the people that you're in charge of. And so I feel like when you are in a position of power, you are abusing it if you are doing bad things to those people.
I like that. I think that's really lovely. I think it's a really good explanation. Just two more questions on that front. Like, what about if the individual couldn't speak your language or they had like a hard time learning your language or something? Okay in those cases?
I feel like it's honestly never okay, but in that case, you're abusing someone who otherwise can't tell you that they don't want to be treated in that way. And I feel like that's the same thing as abusing a child who can not otherwise tell you, hey, I don't like this treatment, stop. And I feel like, again, there's kind of like a weird power dynamic at play if they don't know what you're saying to them or they don't know what you're forcing them to do.
One more kind of in this vein. If I were to like be sailing around and I found an island of Neanderthals, right?
Yeah.
Would it be okay to do that to Neanderthals just because they weren't human?
No. I feel like in any case, it's super wrong.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so those are the first questions. Feeling pretty good about them?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, these questions might get a little harder.
Okay.
So do you eat cows, pigs, chickens, fish, cow's milk, or chicken's eggs? Or wear leather?
I do.
She doesn't.
Okay.
I do.
Above, or?
Yes, all of the above.
Okay. Do you think in the process of, growing those animals and then putting them on your plate or your belt or whatever, do you think there's any torture, enslavement, or killing of those animals?
I definitely think that there is. I think that there is a movement now to have cage-free chickens. But honestly, what does that even mean? Can you even guarantee that what you're eating is a cage-free chicken? Can you guarantee that they're being treated well? Can you guarantee that cows are being fed correctly? And so I definitely do think that it's something that I do struggle with morally. But at the end of the day, I really like bacon.
Yeah. Do you know anything about what happens to pigs, for instance, since we brought up bacon?
I've definitely seen a lot of the things on YouTube, like the documentaries of how animals are treated and how things like meat and other dairy products, animal products are processed. And I definitely think that there is something seriously wrong with that industry. And I think that there is a really strong movement right now to change those things and make it more humane, because I definitely do think that animals deserve to be treated with respect. We have pets, even at this farmer's market, and we're not doing that to our pets. So kind of what differentiates keeping a dog at home versus a pig in a farm that I'm then going to eat? I guess the fact that I'm eating it, but when you think about it, other cultures are not going to keep dogs as pets. They may or may not eat them. You know what I mean? And I feel so there is kind of a cognitive dissonance between I know that a lot of those things are problematic, and yet I continue to buy into it and continue to contribute to it. And I know that it's hard. It is hard. And so you can do your best to try and find things that are being sourced ethically. But at the end of the day, do you really know what you're eating?
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of good points in there. I want to kind of bring it back actually to some of the things you said there, because it seems like, are they really treated well? Are they really not tortured? Right, probably not. But let's say that they weren't, right? Remember in the first questions we asked, we had the torture, but we also had the enslavement and the killing. So like to get a chicken or a pig on your plate, right? Is there any way to do that without killing them?
No, I definitely agree. However, this is going to be problematic. I think that there is an odd issue where we're mass producing these animals, and so we do have to end up killing them because like our environment cannot sustain the sheer amount of animals that we have on this planet, much less like the amount that we're overproducing them, right? And so I think that we do have this problem where we're overproducing these animals, so we inherently have to kill them. If not, the entire ecosystem is going to be thrown off.
Do we have to produce them though?
Because
why are we producing them?
No, that's the question. And so it's kind of like, well, if we're mass producing them and there's all this meat available, if we all stop eating it, will that stop the mass production, or will other people start using animals for different reasons? So it kind of raises the question of, can we even stop mass producing them at this point in society where eating meat is such a inherent part of our diet? Like, I feel like Americans do a really weird job of having meat at every single meal, and I don't think that that's necessarily necessary. Well, I know it's not necessary for us as human beings to be eating that much meat. And also,
is it necessary for us to eat animals or their secretions at all?
I do think so. I think that again, problematic, and I know it's problematic, but I feel like if you follow a strictly vegan diet, it's very, very hard to get the proper nutrients that you need. And part of what makes it really hard is that you have to have money in order to do that. The cheapest things out there to eat are animal products. And so when you start talking about not eating meat products and not eating animal products, I feel like it comes from a very privileged standpoint, because other people in other countries do not have access to almond milk. It's very easy for me to go to the grocery store, buy almond milk, but people in other countries cannot do that. And also, if I decided to go vegan right now, it would kill my bank. The amount of money that I would have to spend on supplements and really watching how I'm getting my protein intake, and I feel like that's not sustainable for everyone financially. And so I feel like it really comes into this, if we as a society value moving away from animal products, then we as a society need to make other alternative options cost effective.
Yeah, so I definitely thought a lot of the things that you just said before I went vegan, I was also under the impression. So one thing is, how long do you think it's been since I've eaten animals or animal products?
I feel like you're going to say something ridiculous, 7 years.
4 years for me.
Okay.
I think it's 5 years for him, and how long for you? Yeah, and she's done Ironmans, she's hiked Mount Kilimanjaro.
No,
now,
I'm not saying
as far as the cost, though, we'll adjust that too. So what are some of the absolutely cheapest foods in the grocery store? Cheapest protein sources?
Eggs.
Eggs are pretty cheap. Do you know what cheaper ones are?
Beans.
Beans, yeah, peanuts are very cheap. Soy can be very cheap. So dried beans particularly. So they've actually done several studies on this, and the cheapest diets, vegan diets, are actually the cheapest diets, both in modeling studies and even when they actually looked at people buying them, actually buying the diets and tracking them. And of course, you can eat an expensive vegan diet. You can totally buy the bougiest almond milk available. But yeah, most vegan food, and especially most vegan protein staples, are actually quite cheap. And I'll tell you, personally, my grocery bill has not gone up. It even goes down some months from what it was. So yeah, that is something that everyone thinks. Everyone thinks that it's super expensive, and I can tell you personally, it is not. Yeah.
So I took a diet and nutrition class last year, and my professor was saying that it is possible to get all of the proteins that you need from eating a wide variety of vegetables, because once you eat across a range, you get everything that you need. So are you just more conscious about expanding your diet so that you're getting all the necessary nutrients that you need because you're no longer eating animal products?
So not really. So this is one of these things that's technically true, but practically largely irrelevant. So for instance, a lot of cultures will eat beans and rice, because beans will be high in a particular amino acid and rice will be high in another one. It's so you got to eat them together to make sure all your amino acids are met. But the truth is, honestly, if you just eat like whatever food in a day, it's really hard to be under on your amino acids. Any sort of like normal mix of food that you would typically eat as a vegan is basically going to get you there, as long as you're like kind of making sure you get some protein and as long as you eat enough calories. When people switch to a vegan diet, the biggest thing is often that they like will start eating less because the volume of food is larger. So the foods tend to have more fiber and water in them, which is actually healthy for you and it like fills you up quicker. But when you first switch over, you're like, oh, I'm full, I totally ate all my calories. And you ate 1,500 calories rather than 2,000. And so a lot of people actually experience like weight loss on a vegan diet, but then they don't realize, oh, it's because I'm actually like eating under my calories. So that's the only thing I would really look out for. But again, even that's pretty easy, like after a little bit to like kind of figure out, I would say. Yeah. Everyone comes and brings up the price thing. And it is, I think, really the biggest misconception that there is about veganism. You can eat an expensive vegan diet. There's no doubt about it.
Sure.
But you can also eat a very cheap vegan diet. And you can also eat everything in between.
But what about the accessibility issue? Like, I feel like as like college students, like on campus, it's very hard to find things that are vegetarian and even harder to find things that are vegan. And so like if that's on a college campus, like I can't imagine how it is in other parts of the country that don't have those resources. Like I feel like vegan diets aren't, that's what I mean when I say like they're not the most cost effective things. Like if you go into like poorer populations, like they're definitely not eating a vegan diet.
Here's the thing. I'll say that I haven't been to every grocery store, but I've been to lots of grocery stores, including really low-end grocery stores in like different parts of cities and stuff. And I can almost always find some sort of vegetable and some sort of like canned beans or wheat or bread or things like that. And really like the staples of a vegan diet, it's going to be some sort of grain and some sort of legume.
Yeah.
And almost every place has beans and some sort of grain or rice,
Yeah.
So it really is pretty much everywhere that you can get that. Now, of course, there are going to be some food deserts that are really food deserty.
Yeah.
That can happen. But part of the thing is, I'm not out there talking to people in food deserts. I'm out here talking to people at the farmer's market, right? Yeah. So usually if someone's walking from the farmer's market, they have some access to food, I think.
Yeah.
So
sure.
yeah.
And I will just say one more thing. I feel like eating meat can be a very cultural thing. I feel like a lot of cultures really prioritize meat. Like some cultures, like you cannot get a vegetarian dish to save your life. Like it is very meat heavy. And so how do you reconcile like people who are coming from those cultures? Like how do you justify to them like why should they go vegan?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is like culture is a really powerful tool. I don't think anyone's denying that,
Yeah.
It's pretty much everyone's culture. Like, I grew up grilling hot dogs and burgers with my dad, and like I have nostalgic memories that are tied to that, right? So like, of course, there's culture in there, and that definitely makes it harder. I think the thing I think about though is like, if you think like, okay, let's like take a historical lens. In the past, have people used culture to justify horrible things and horrible oppression, right? So to me, that feels like not a great excuse. Like it feels like a reason that would make it harder for sure, but it doesn't feel like a justification to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool. I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
So why, I guess, is it okay for animals to eat other animals, but us as humans who are also animals to not, like it's not okay for us to eat animals?
So if you think about like lions, is something people bring up a lot, right? Lions do all kinds of stuff. Lions will just murder other lions. Lions, whenever they go into a new tribe, they'll eat the other tribe's babies. So like if we're taking our cues from animals, like would you be like, okay, it's okay for me to go and like eat another human's babies? We have moral agency basically. And maybe lions have some degree of moral agency, but certainly not as developed as ours. Non-human animals, they're what we call moral patients, meaning that they have inherent moral value, but they're not moral agents, meaning that they can't like effectuate their morals in the world. They can't like think about them like we can. And so I would say that's the big difference. Does that make sense, or is that?
Yeah, that makes sense.
I was gonna bring it back to something, because I asked you like what happens to pigs, right? And I didn't hear any specifics from you, so I just didn't want to know, did you know any of the specifics?
I know that they're squeezed into very tight spaces. I know that they're left just like laying around in their own filth. Like they're force fed these like really pretty disgusting diets, and then like the way that they're slaughtered isn't super humane. Yeah.
And that's some of it. That's what most people know. That's some of it. But there's a bunch of other standard practices that actually happen to pigs and other animals in the industry. Do you care if I show you a really quick 1-minute video about what happens to them?
We actually have to get going.
It's totally cool if you don't. That's fine. I will just tell you real quick, because I do like to.
Okay.
Because we're kind of in like a very heady space right now, or very like philosophical. But I think it's important to have like a concrete, like,
Yeah.
oh, this is what actually goes on, right? Pigs actually have their teeth and tails cut off while they're babies, with no anesthetic. Do you know why that would be?
So that they can't fight back?
So that they can't bite each other. They actually get very distressed when they're together and thing. They also, this is kind of gross, but they also have their testicles cut out, fully conscious with no painkillers. Do you know why we would do that?
So that they can't reproduce unless they want them to.
Exactly. We control their reproduction, but it also makes them taste bad. So when we cut them up, so because of the taste, we will like literally do that. And then do you know typically how they're like stunned or killed?
Something is punctured through their head.
That's what most people think. That's like the thing that people think is most common. Almost all pigs, a very high percentage of them are actually put into gas chambers. They're a CO2 gas chamber. They pump the CO2 in, it suffocates them, and it forms like an acidic compound. Like you ever drank like soda too quickly, and it forms acid? It forms it in their throat and nose.
Arguably, that is the most humane way to kill animals. That's how animals are killed in laboratory settings.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the point. That's the most humane way, is with them suffocating to death, burning from the inside out. So is that humane, I guess?
So I guess if you're against killing animals, are you also against vaccines and medicine as a whole? Because all of medicine is built upon the research that is done on animals. Mm-hmm. So how do you justify that?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's hard to justify. So generally, the thing to understand is that, like, obviously I'm talking about veganism here. I feel like you guys know that, right?
Yes.
So veganism isn't a death cult, right? So there is some degree of practicality where if something is absolutely necessary, like a medication for your survival, that's something where an exception would be made. But vegans actually do want to stop the use of animal testing for medications.
So are vegans going to volunteer to be tested on?
So that's what we think is probably the most ethical thing, is probably to have humans, actual human volunteers. But
really?
Part of the thing is that a lot of animal research is actually not very good. So when you look into it, like the mice research doesn't transfer over that well to human research, but there's also alternatives. So we have like computer modeling, tissue and samples. Now those things aren't all the way to the level that we want them, of course, but we don't have a lot of incentive to do them because we have animals. So part of the thing is because we see animals as objects, they're always our go-to, right? But the thing is, the reason I talk more about food and leather here is because while medication can get like stickier as far as surviving, we know we can survive and thrive not eating animals. And by far, that's where most animals are killed. Very small percentage of animals are killed and commodified and exploited in medicine compared to in food. It's like, I think at least 96% of animals that are killed for food. Yeah.
Well, it was great talking to you.
Yeah, let me just give you like one more kind of thing about why I'm here. So basically everything we talked about today is like symptoms, right? You know, the killing, even the enslavement, the torture. The problem is, the thing that I'm trying to get people to realize is that animals are essentially, they're someone, not something. And our commodification and our like someone or something of them, that's what kind of leads to all these other problems, right? And so that's what I'm kind of trying to get people to rethink. And I'm of course trying to get them to go vegan, because I think that just leads to all those other things. If you think in history, like every time we've treated someone as a something, it's been horrible for them, right? And I think we're just doing the same thing here with animals when we don't need to. Well, if I had a resource for you guys about veganism, would you take it?
Probably not.
Okay.
Probably.
You would?
Yeah.
Okay, I got you one. Just real quick, you hold this. And if you want to help me make this my full-time career, check out the Patreon in the description. And shout out to Ryan O'Neill, Tom Eisenbeiss, NetBase News, Monstar, David Yastrzemski, and Maxwell Edison.